All right, so this game tells us historical records show that over the course of 5 consecutive years, 601, 602, 603, 604, and 605, a certain emperor began construction of 6 monuments, F, G, H, L, M, and S. A historian is trying to determine the years in which the individual monuments were begun. The following facts have been established. All right, so we are looking at this scenario where we have these monuments, F, G, H, L, M, and S, and we are trying to place them in 5 consecutive years. Right away, we should notice we have 6 monuments, 5 years. This is not going to be a one-to-one game. All right, so let's take a look now at the conditions that we are given. Our first rule tells us L was begun in a later year than G, but in an earlier year than F. So we know that G comes before L and L comes before F. And again, we know from that condition that we can conclude a number of things. First, F can't be first or second. G can't be last or second to last. And then L can't be first and L can't be last. Our second condition tells us that H was begun no earlier than 604. Well, if H cannot be earlier than 604, well, it can't be 601, can't be 602, can't be 603. So you notice the second rule is effectively telling us that H is either going to be in 604 or 605. The third condition tells us that M was begun earlier than 604. So again, telling us that M cannot be in 604 or 605, right? The idea that M is before 604. So M is going to be somewhere in 601, 602, or 603. And then our fourth and final condition here tells us 2 of the monuments were begun in 601 and no other monument was begun in the same year as any other monuments. So the last rule here solves our problem of not one-to-one. We know 601 is actually going to have 2 monuments, but every other year has exactly 1. Now, before we move on here, there is one deduction to make. No big deal if you don't make it before you proceed, because as we get to question number 2, you're going to notice they force you to make it anyway. But there are 2 possibilities. Either H is going to be in 604, or H is going to be in 605. So I'm going to draw both of those out here. Now, again, what do we know? Well, notice that in our second scenario here, where H is in 605, L cannot be in 604, because where would F go? And that is the key deduction, because in our other scenario, H is already in 604, so L clearly can't be in 604. So in both of our scenarios, L can't be in 604, which leads to the deduction, L cannot be in 604. And again, not a big deal if you don't make it here, because you will be forced to make it again at question number 2. So now let's turn our attention to the questions.